What's up, guys? Quinn Henoch here of Juggernaut Training Systems and Clinical Athlete. I'm here with Kristi Brewer, weightlifting stud extraordinaire from Team Juggernaut. We're going to talk about front rack positioning, mobility, range of motion, comfort, whatever you want to call it. The front rack is a really common position that a lot of people have trouble with, or they're uncomfortable. It could be in the clean or the front squat. So that's what we're going to do now. So Kristi is going to assume a position on the bar. Now, if you struggle with the front rack, you'll see probably a very similar sight, and Kristi's even explained this herself, like when she's cold, doesn't have a great front rack position, especially with the empty bar. So can we see a position where maybe you're mimicking the positions that you're having trouble with in the front rack? So we'll see very often is like, perhaps the bar is sitting on the clavicle or even the shoulders, and she's like a little bit off the shoulders right now. But the elbows are barely in front of the bar. You know, if she were to go into a front squat and dip her torso forward, she'd probably lose it forward. And then, well, it's easy, you know, just drive the elbows up. But sometimes athletes just can't seem to do that. Whatever it is, the positioning of the shoulders or the upper back. And then if they do that, the bar comes off of the shoulders or something like that, right? It's not very comfortable. Or you start doing the old T-Rex front rack where you lose your fingers, right? And we've all been there where we catch a clean and we're having to try 2 and 3 times to get our hands back on the bar, and you're like, I gotta jerk this thing? No way. So go ahead and rack it. Ideally, what we're striving for, at least in the front squat, and at least when we're coaching the front rack, especially for beginners and for athletes who already have trouble losing their hands off the bar when they're transitioning from the clean and the jerk, is we'll cue a whole hand around the bar as best you can. Now, whole hand doesn't mean that you start with your whole hand and then as you transition, your fingers start to slide off and you're back into this. Whole hand means whole hand. And so we're striving for that. Can you give that a shot, Kristi? And whatever it is, there's no judgment here on the Juggernaut YouTube channel. So that's not too bad, and she's got, just kind of view this position here. The bar is not necessarily just jamming on the collarbone. Kristi's positioning her shoulders in such a way that it's resting on a shelf. And so her shoulder blades are slightly protracted. They're slightly, you can even elevate the shoulders a little bit to get the bar off of your collarbone or off of your shoulders, and so you can actually breathe in this position. Go ahead and rack it. But something that's very helpful is actually adding a little bit of weight to the bar, because my favorite mobility positional drill for the front rack is the front rack itself, shockingly enough. And then people are like, Quinn, you're just being an asshole now because I already told you that I can't get into the front rack, in which I will argue that you probably can. We just got to finagle a way to get you there, because you can do all the stretches and different separate drills that you want, but if you could just be in the front rack for a sustained amount of time, that's going to give you the positional tolerance and mobility specific to the front rack. So Kristi, come around here. Commonly for lifters who have trouble with this position, what's common is they'll grab the bar and then they'll basically jam their neck to the bar first, so the elbows have a long way to go. They're already way behind the bar. They've got to swing all the way, basically 180 degrees. And sometimes it's just too much. They end up stopping right about there. And that's where you get I'm basically holding the bar in the air. So yeah, exactly like that. You're already jammed up. So what I'm going to recommend is you start with whole hand around the bar, thumbs too. Now I want you to drop a level. So basically do a quarter squat. From here, use the roll of the bar to drive your elbows forward first. You see that her body is below the bar. The elbows are already where we want to be. Now she's slowly going to drive her body up to meet the bar, striving to keep her elbows exactly where they were. Do that one more time, Kristi. That looks really good. Go a little bit slower. So you're going to squat down first. Then position elbows where you want. Now slowly wind up in this position. And I just may have you hold here, because what you're going to feel, most people have the shoulder flexion to do this. It's the external rotation component of the front rack that can be a little uncomfortable. So if you can only get to, drop down a little bit. Let's say you can only get to here and you start to feel things winding up. Hang out there. Why do another stretch if you can just do your stretching here? So you can take some deep breaths in through your nose, try to drive air. When you exhale, drive the elbows forward and up. So you're exhaling and driving forward. Get some breaths here. Breathe in so put air between my fingers. Exhale, drive elbows forward and up, and then relax out of that for a second, shake it out. So we'll recommend, yeah, exactly. It's like a wall sit. So without even taking the bar out of the rack, we're gaining positional tolerance to the front rack. So 4 or 5 breaths at a time. Go into that position one more time, and I'll actually have you take the bar out of the rack. So again, we start lower than the bar, we use the roll of the bar, and then we slowly bring our body up to meet it, trying to maintain that elbow position. Now just drive straight up and hold. Big deep breaths, put air into your upper back. Breathe in again, exhale hard. Good, 4 or 5 breaths there, and then rack it. So you may not get there, you may not be able to lift the bar. Again, you could stop halfway and just get some breaths. What you'll find is that your body will kind of melt into position. You'll get short-term changes relatively quickly. And if you do that, 1, 2, even 3 times a week for consistently over the course of many weeks, you'll see some permanent change. All of a sudden, you'll have some semblance of a front rack when you were kind of spinning your wheels with other things. Now, I want to talk about the upper back position, because in the front squat and the clean, we talk a lot about maintaining that upright upper back, stacking the pelvis and the rib cage. We hear if somebody's kind of caving forward in the front squat that their upper back is weak. I'm going to argue a couple things. It's like saying your wrist is the weak point when you're overhead. No shit. The wrist is a very floppy, weak joint. It's always going to be the weak link when we look up the chain. The upper back is always going to be the weak link compared to the lower back. There's just more muscles down here. The front rack and the front squat is all about positioning. So if the bar is forward of your center, now your fulcrum is your upper back. I don't care how strong your upper back is. If your hips are behind the bar, you're going to have some semblance of here. So you can take care of upper back positioning by simply getting your hips underneath you and learning how to stay tall. So it's not about gaining this crazy excessive amount of extension. It's really just about being able to resist flexion. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Kristi, come over here to the wall. We're going to do a little drill. There was a cool study in 2012 in the Journal of Sports Orthopedic Physical Therapy, JOSPT, Journal of Sport Physical Therapy. And the lead author was Ed Munstun, but essentially he showed that the thoracic spine extends, so that upper back extension, we want that for a front rack, when you put your arms over your head. It's a coupled motion. So we can do an exercise to just demonstrate this. Put your arms, this is a simple wall slide exercise. Bend your knees a little bit just to give you some slack. And then push your arms. Yeah, so we're gonna exaggerate this position. Some of you be like, well, that looks like my front rack, or that looks like my front squat. So we're gonna try to reverse this, but as Kristi slides her arms up the wall, I want you to notice what happens to her upper back. You see that curve start to reverse, right? You see that upper back start to extend. Go back down. Do that one more time. Slide up the wall, and then just get tall through your upper back. Good, so you can see that extension happen just kind of globally through this segment of her spine. This is a really nice position. If I was just looking at this and we transpose the bar, that would be a nice front rack position. Or just as far as the upper back is concerned. So this is actually a drill that you can do. Take some deep breaths here, breathe in through your nose, try to drive air into your upper back. But you can do this exercise as just a demonstration that you don't need a crazy amount of thoracic spine extension. You just need to be able to hold this position in the front rack. So here are a couple drills that you can do. Kristi, do a squat for me. And I'm gonna grab a weight for you. So air squat, and hold this guy. For a lot of you, 2 hands. For a lot of you, this is a counterbalance. Kristi can just sit in the squat and be cool. Like she can counterbalance herself. Some of you won't be able to do that. So a weight in front allows you to sit straight down without falling on your butt. So it's a nice counterbalance for you. Now, elbows in tight. An exercise that we like to do to mimic the upper back extension, to show an athlete how to drive their hips underneath them so that they can stay super upright, is basically holding a weight. Could be a kettlebell or a plate like this, and you're just gonna drive the plate straight up to my hand. Keep the elbows in tight. Good, do that again. Now, Kristi can go all the way up and straighten her elbows. You don't have to. You could just keep your elbows in tight and just go to here. Pause right there and then breathe. Pause, hold that, and then put air, breathe in through your nose, drive air into your upper back. Just hold it, just breathe. Exhale, yeah. So we're mimicking that position for the front rack. Come around the side here so you can see what happens. Stand up and shake it out if you need to. Woo. And we're talking like 4 or 5 reps here. You do maybe 2 or 3, and then you get down into your squat again. So squat one more time. I want you to watch what happens to her hips as she drives the weight straight up to my hand. Good. Drive up a little higher. You can see her upper back starts to naturally reverse from flexion to that natural degree of extension. Her hips counterbalance herself underneath the weight, and she's in a nice position here. Come back down. One more time. Watch her upper back drive up, and you see her shirt starts to wrinkle up here, and that's just natural. When your shoulders flex, when you put your arms over your head, your upper back straightens, and so this is T-spine mobility work, but it's really just positional teaching. And relax for a second. Drop the weight, stand up. For some of you, again, she's making this look real easy. For some of you guys, you may need an extra counterbalance. So it's okay to give yourself some slack to elevate your heels, even if you already wear weightlifting shoes. I realize some of you say, well, this is a crutch. If your front squat looks like a turtle, you need some help. So this is a way to give you some slack. We're giving you extra counterbalance so that you can exaggerate a position, and then the expectation and the idea is that you can slowly wean yourself off of the extra heel lift. So can I see you do it with the extra heel lift? We kind of already know what it's going to look like. But it could be the 5 kilo plates, it could be the, like 2.5 like we have now, but it's just going to give you the ability to exaggerate the position that you want. Yeah, and then again, you see that she's stacking the hips right underneath the rib cage, just like Max Ada always talks about, is driving the hips forward or driving the knees forward so the hips are under the bar. Hold this, put air right here. Breathe in, exhale hard, elbows in tight, air, good. And you see this nice extended thoracic spine, but it's not exaggerated. It's not hyperextended by any means. It's just straight up and down. And then relax. Come back to the bar. So something like that exercise could be coupled with just your front rack holds. So you could do sets of 4 or 5 breaths, front rack holds, plus, in between doing that drill or doing a wall slide. So you let the drill be your teaching tool. So you can tell the athlete, hey, you feel your upper back, straighten like that? Do you feel the muscles of your upper back have to work? And they're like, yeah, now I feel what you're talking about. Good. Now do that in the front rack. So let's come back over here. And then we'll set up it just like we were before, kind of underneath the bar. Drive the elbows. Now she doesn't need to be as exaggerated because her front rack is looking pretty good, but let's go ahead and take that bar out. And if we watch from the side, you up for a couple squats?
Yeah.
Okay. The idea behind the front squat is that nothing changes up top. So go ahead and squat. So a little, yeah, there you go, good. And it looks just like the drill. So go a little slower on the way down just so they can see. She's trying to maintain that anti-flexion component. Drive up one more time. Do it one more time. So she's not hyperextended through her upper back by any means, but she's just trying to maintain that position as best she can. And she stands up by driving the hips to the bar. Go ahead and rack it. Good. So front rack mobility 101. Of course, I'll get the questions of, well, can I foam roll my lats? Can I stretch my shoulders? Won't that help as well? And I would recommend that you go see our the Mobility Miss video on static stretching and foam rolling as well. The answer is yes, you can do whatever you want. But those things are kind of adjunct. If you want to foam roll your lats for 20 seconds in between sets, that's fine. That's the cherry on top. It shouldn't take the place of specific positional mobility, positional teaching. Those loaded drills that counterbalance front rack, thoracic spine exercise, whatever you want to call it, has much more carryover because it's active and you're having to fight for a certain position rather than it being some type of passive, like we're rearranging ourselves like clay. Okay, so put yourself in the position and be patient with the process. If you do this multiple times a week, your body will acclimate, I promise you. If you're in need of a healthcare provider, if you're injured, I'd recommend finding somebody who actually knows lifting. It always helps. Right? If you say front rack, you're not speaking another language to them, and we have those types of providers at Clinical Athlete untitled.com. Thanks, guys.